Hi, and welcome to July's edition of Breck Buzz. Today we are going to be talking all about the arts in Breckenridge, so stay tuned. We're going to have our town council member Gary Gallagher with us. Welcome back to July's edition of Breck Buzz. I am your host, Haley Littleton, and today we are lucky to have Town Council member Gary Gallagher with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
So people who may have seen the last edition, we talked a lot about the changes that we're looking at in the tourism sector with the destination management plan and kind of a reevaluation of what Breckenridge wants to be as a tourist destination and what we are doing in the future. What people may not know is that we've also sort of been doing a similar thing for the arts, really reevaluating what does it mean for Breckenridge to be an arts destination and what does it look like for the town to really support an arts destination. So, Gary, maybe start with telling us why Town Council has a vested interest in the arts.
The reason, Haley, is a couple-fold. First of all, we recognize that as a mountain resort community, we are in competition with many other resort communities throughout the West. And in order to, let's call it, stay ahead of the pack, it's important that we offer a variety of offerings to not only to our locals, but also to our guests who come in and visit Breckenridge for other reasons. Breckenridge has branded itself as a world-class, skiing resort with Breckenridge Ski Resort. Likewise with our biking, both road biking and mountain biking. And our authentic Victorian historic town. And our citizens are friendly, they're outgoing, they're helpful. So we have a tremendous amount to offer. And the one I haven't mentioned yet is the other piece of this in order to, I think, fulfill our offerings across the board for folks is the arts. We know today, unlike maybe 10, 20 years ago, people came to ski 10 or 20 years ago for 5 days, they'd ski for 5 days, the whole family. They weren't looking for other experiences. We know now that folks are looking for, in effect, a menu of offerings. So if they come out here for a 5 or 6 day skiing experience, sure, they'll ski 2 or 3 days. Perhaps the whole family won't, some in the family won't ski at all. Right. They're looking for other things to do. And so we have felt that the arts is extremely important. Again, we know from a lot of stories that when communities have a difficult time, or even when school districts have a difficult time, one of the first things that gets cut are the arts. Right. And that hurts the kids. So by us supporting the arts in Breckenridge, for which we have 5 resident arts organizations, and we'll talk about them in a minute in terms of specifically what their mission is, all of these arts organizations have programs where they support our kids in the schools. Right, definitely. Throughout the school year, they're going into the classes, so that the kids are growing up and appreciating and understanding that there is something else out there other than just athletics and academics. Throughout the summer, many of our resident arts organizations offer camps for those that are thinking of going on to be thespians, for those that just want to really get more into become a musician, right. A dancer, whatever the case might be. So from the town's point of view, it's important to maintain a competitive edge. And by so doing, we're offering our guests the kind of an opportunity that is not available in all the mountain resort communities, because we can offer theater, we offer film, we offer orchestral, we offer popular music, we offer festivals, and a lot of our other offerings are in the area of environmental and sustainability, and we curate those kind of installations year-round. So I think it really speaks to Breckenridge in terms of trying to provide a full format, not only for our locals, but also for our guests. And we got to remember that our guests drive the majority of our revenues and allow us to continue to do everything we want to do in this community. Right, definitely. And
the foresight of previous town councils to develop the Arts District campus, kind of creating a hub for the arts in Breckenridge, which is beautiful, and I think was inspired by Anderson Ranch down in Snowmass Village. and kind of how they had refurbished some of their older buildings to house the arts.
Yeah, really, it was. This goes back to like about 2013 when the town council really began to start thinking about the arts more broadly. We had some venues.
Right.
And at that time, town employees were being asked to program and oversee some of our town venues. And at the same time, they had responsibilities sort of within the town. Mm-hmm. And once we realized that perhaps it was time to bring in some professional management and to actually remove all the operations,
right,
both the physical operations of maintaining these facilities as well as doing the programming, to in effect put Breckenridge on the map. Mm-hmm. It was time to start making some big investments, which we started making some significant investments. As you said, we decided to build out the Arts District campus very quickly. That had been earlier councils, that was a 10-year program. And the council that came in 2012 basically said, look, let's just get this construction behind us. Let's start using these facilities, right, so on and so forth. So about $10 or $12 million went into that arts campus renovation. Shortly thereafter, we followed with the Backstage Breckenridge Theater.
Yes, yes.
Which the Backstage Theater is our community theater group. We spent about $2.5 million renovating that building. We did significant upgrades to the Riverwalk Center, which is where a lot of our orchestral as well as popular music performs. And we also, at the time we redid the community center, the Breck Grand Vacations Community Center.
Right.
We upgraded significantly what we call the Speakeasy, which is our movie theater. So all of these things happened within about a 2-year period. And the council, I think, one day stepped back and said, wow, we've just dropped $20 or $25 million into our, I call them, portfolio of venues,
right,
for which these different resident arts organizations are using. And oh my goodness, it's really time to get some professional management here. Mm-hmm. And that's when we went out and decided to create a 501c3, which we call the Breck Creative Arts.
Right.
And we brought in a professional manager who previously had been in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Mm-hmm. His name was Rob Wolf. And so we hired Rob, and what we said to Rob was a couple things. We said, look, we want you to take over all of the functions that the town was previously doing, mm-hmm, everything from managing the venues to programming them, to overseeing our Public Art Commission, to working collaboratively with the other resident arts organizations in town, to also bring some festivals into town, mm-hmm, and do some other sort of year-round installations. Because at that time, the strategy was we were going to use our arts to drive tourism.
Right.
Because we were just coming off, several years earlier, obviously the big downturn in the economy, so, mm-hmm, the thought was, oh my goodness, let's use whatever tool we have in the box to encourage people to come to Breckenridge. And at the end of the day, it was extremely successful.
Right.
And now we had 5 resident arts organizations, all who had a specific mission. And it was supporting and complementing our skiing, our golf, our biking. And the next thing you know, Breckenridge was humming, winning all kinds of national awards for its arts community and its arts offerings. And we thought we had a great, terrific thing underway. And then it was, shortly thereafter, town council as well as the community started to recognize, oh my goodness, we're achieving too much success.
Right.
And I think you probably touched on that on your earlier session in terms of our destination management plan with, yes, the Breck Tourism Office and aligning those goals with the town's goals, which were 95% similar. And then, the strategy is changing a little bit. And the strategy changing is, yes, we want to continue making quite a few offerings available across the board in the arts. But we really want to be focusing on the folks that are already here.
Right.
The folks that are here because they live here as locals, or the folks that have come here for other reasons, and to make sure that they have plenty to do while they are here, but not using our arts anymore to really drive additional tourism. Let's just take care of the folks that are here, and the goal being to really address both our locals and our guests sort of in an equal fashion in terms of what are they looking for? What are they interested in, and trying to provide those kind of offerings and programmings for them.
Yeah, I think as a great example, BCA had mentioned that because of local interest, they started to do more metalsmithing classes and woodworking classes and some more of those kind of craft industry sort of offerings. And so I think that what that points to is that this is a very dynamic and fluid sort of mission and sort of focus. And it makes sense why we would reevaluate every 5 years or so. Also, if one day sort of climate issues make it a little bit harder to draw that recreation side, we've also got the arts to kind of fall back on. And so, we just recently did this whole kind of reevaluation with a consultant group. And so maybe you can share a little bit about what that process was. I think you gave a great foundation for why we wanted to do it, but maybe talk about what the process was.
Sure. Yeah. Back in January, there was a couple of reasons for it. One is it's not uncommon when you have a startup operation to take a look at it 3 to 5 years down the road. It's just like any private business. And the other thing that I think really kicked it off was that Rob Wolf, who we hired to be our CEO and president of the Breck Creative Arts, he had indicated back early in 2018 that he was going to be moving on. In this business, these highly creative folks generally stay anywhere from 2 to 4 years, and then they generally move on.
Right.
And so Rob gave us a signal that he would be looking to move on. It was right about that 4-year period. And we said, okay, for those 2 reasons, a startup, let's take a look at what's worked, what hasn't worked, how it's worked, what changes we may wish to make. And with the fact that he would be leaving and we would be needing a new leadership for the BCA, we decided that it would be appropriate to bring in a national consulting firm whose background is looking at arts and theater organizations across the country and making recommendations in terms of how they can improve, how they can streamline their operations, things of this nature. And so we hired, the company was AMS, and we hired them first of all to take a look at BCA in terms of what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, how have they managed their budgets, have they met the needs of the community. But we also asked them to make sure they involve the other resident arts organizations.
Right.
That would be the Backstage Theater, the National Repertory Orchestra, Breck Music, and the Breck Film Festival. And make sure that they spent time with those folks and sort of understood what their goals and visions were, along with the goals and visions of the town for BCA, because BCA, in effect, is really an offshoot of the town, since the town provides about 80% of their financing. And so AMS went through this comprehensive study. It probably lasted almost 6 months. And the results were not surprising, but I think it was important to have a third party issue their report, because I think it substantiated a lot which the resident arts organizations as well as the town council probably knew going in. And the AMS probably put a little more refinement on some of those things. But the 2 big takeaways, I think, for town council were we are really underutilizing our venues.
Yes.
Okay? And they did some measurements in yardsticks. But the bottom line was there's a lot more animation, a lot more programming that really can be done in all of our venues. And the second piece of it was there's a real ability to become more efficient and more effective by having better collaboration and cooperation amongst and between all of the resident arts organizations.
Right.
So I think those were the 2 big, takeaways. And from that, the town council kind of had some conversations, and we decided that yes, there is no reason why we shouldn't be using these facilities more, why people couldn't work more collaboratively together. And the bottom line, like anything else, the history of our resident arts organizations have always been sort of like we had 5 fiefdoms. We had BCA and we had the other 4 resident arts organizations. They were all reasonably vertically integrated.
Right.
They had their own back of the house. They had their own general and administrative staff. They had their own marketing budgets. And when you realize what the town provides to all of these organizations, we provide free use of the venues.
Yes.
We provide a lot of in-kind services. We provide direct money resources through our granting process. We also provide money to backstop popular music, so that if a particular group comes in, and Breck Music, who runs this, is unable to sell sufficient tickets, and there's a loss, there's a kitty against which those losses can go. Because at the end of the day, what the town wants is a lot of animation. They want a lot of programming in these facilities. And we are prepared to support in any way we can achieving that kind of a mission. That's our vision.
Right.
And so there's kind of a couple ways to approach that. In the old days, since the town is the big resource provider, it's always easy for the elephant in the room to say, okay, this is the way it's going to be done.
Right.
And in these more modern times, there's a sense of team. You work as teams, you work collaboratively. So we took what we heard from AMS and said, absolutely, we really want to see improvement in these two keen areas. And so we sat down with the resident arts organizations. We started initially with a board member from each organization along with their executive director. We all sat in a room. Rick Holman as our town manager and myself were the two representatives from the town. And our first meeting or two was, let's get all the water under the bridge.
Right.
Okay? Let's start it clean, because quite frankly, what also came out from the AMS, there was a bit of finger pointing.
Right.
And it never goes one way. Everybody sort of participates in kind of pointing a finger at other groups, other organizations. So we first said, look, let's start with a clean slate. It's water under the bridge. Everybody okay with that? Everybody said fine. They were excited, quite frankly, to get around the table for the first time with the town saying, we want you to basically come up with a process that can address some of the sticky issues. Some of the sticky issues such as scheduling the venues. We call it calendaring. That's always been very difficult, and it's been a kind of a messy process to date. To look for ways where we can do things more cooperatively, as joint ventures. Look for ways where we can do some cost sharing.
Right.
There's no reason everybody has their own marketing budget. There's no reason everybody needs to have their own finance people. I mean, so some of the very simple and common things, trying to get away from this notion of silos.
Yes.
And we recognize that what it's going to take was going to take trust around the table and some compromising. And we said, okay, is this something everybody is open to? There is nothing off the table. Or I should say everything is off the table.
Right.
A clean slate.
Right.
And from the town's perspective, we would like you all, the 5 resident organizations, with a high-level board member and an executive director, to sit down and start working through a process. And where we would like the process to start is to come up with a vision and mission for the town of Breckenridge arts and culture.
Wonderful, yeah.
And we said, once that can be established and agreed upon by everyone, then each other organization can then refine their own vision and mission in support of, I'll call it, the superior mission.
Right.
Because we're all here for the town of Breckenridge to make the arts and culture something very, very special and keep us ahead of our competition.
Exactly.
And that's where we are today. We have now gone from, let's say, clearing the landscape, where everybody is very excited and very focused on saying, okay, if you're asking us to take the lead on this, that's exactly what we're going to do. So we have now created another group. We call it an organizational design group. And on that group is going to be one representative from each of the 5 resident arts organizations, a board member or a board member equivalent, to be led by a strategic facilitator. And their task is to work through not only what the vision and mission for the town that everybody can basically agree to, but also to start attacking some of the thornier issues. What is the process? What's the best process for handling scheduling?
Right.
How do we work more collaboratively together? Are there some areas where we can do some cost savings so that the savings can be reinvested into programming? Because that's what the town at the end of the day wants, is more programming. But we want all of these recommendations to basically bubble up, bottom up.
Right.
As opposed to top down. Because we said, look, quite frankly, what do we know about the arts? Okay? You guys that are actually in theater and the music and the film, I mean, you're doing it every day.
Right.
So we're really looking to you to see where there's some synergies can be had. And each one of these individuals that are going to represent their own organization on this organizational design committee, they all come from corporate backgrounds where they are familiar with putting different groups together, different businesses together, where they have an appreciation that each resident arts organization has their own culture.
Right.
And so you've got to be sensitive to the culture, to the respective boards of directors, and how over time can perhaps this all lead to a possible different structuring so that we don't just see 5 separate resident organizations attempting to weave and bob and kind of work together. Are there some better synergies, better processes than what we have today? And that's what the town is looking at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that what is so wonderful and encouraging about all of that is that it is very in line with the destination management plan. And I think the perspective that we're all shifting towards now is that when locals really benefit from these services, visitors do as well, you know. And so I know a big focus is to offer more programming for our locals, and so it's no longer this which one do you focus on, but that you can do creative things to benefit both.
Yep.
And I think that the arts especially is something that, as you said, enriches the lives of everyone that lives here, everyone that visits here, it is almost overwhelming in the summer how many options you have in terms of arts engagement and the theater and all of those things.
It really is. And and the way we look at it is our market is every man, woman, and child who finds themselves actually in Summit County. This not just Breckenridge.
Right, yes, of course.
Within Summit County. That really is the market for all of the resident arts organizations who reside in Breckenridge. Mm-hmm. And that's also the message we're trying to get out there is, our market's not just Breckenridge.
Right.
It's the county.
It's the county. And maybe touch on this a little bit more in terms of, we've talked about programming for the Arts District. What was the perspective of the consultants when it comes to all of our festivals that we have? Because we know that almost all of our resident organizations put on their kind of specific festivals. Specifically with respect to the Breck Creative Arts, mm-hmm. that has been known to put on 2 major festivals each year, something called WAVE in June, mm-hmm. and BIFA, Breckenridge International Festival of Arts, in the August time period. And both of those festivals generally have attracted international artists. Right.
Have come in and done some incredible things for which Breckenridge has gotten all kinds of wows. And one of the things that our locals in particular, which town council was hearing loud and clear, was they really felt there hasn't been enough programming and animation in our arts district. Mm-hmm. And so, with the town already providing well over $2 million a year to Breck Creative Arts, the town really has said, look, we're happy supporting the arts and culture, particularly Breck Creative Arts, $2.3 million a year, but we've got some things that we need to fix. And one of them is more animation and more programming in our arts district. And so the thought was perhaps we didn't need to do 2 big festivals each year.
Right.
We still want to maintain for Breckenridge and have BCA drive it, the wow factor. I mean, it's one thing you can do, you can do theater and you can do film and you can do orchestral and you can do popular music and those kind of things, which are important. But what BCA has really brought, I think, to the town is that wow factor.
Definitely.
And so we've said to BCA, we want to continue that wow factor, but we've got some soft spots here that we really need to build up a little bit. So what we're going to do this coming year is we're going to maintain Wave, because that really kicks off our season in June. And it tends really to attract more locals.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's
than
wonderful.
guest.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I think it's just a great thing for our locals to see the town really thinking of them and being really interested in them. And that festival has a lot of successes and just gets a lot of kudos.
Yeah.
BIFA that we have run generally in August, generally has run at the same time we have our big mountain bike race, Breck Epic. And so we've already got a ton of people coming into town for Breck Epic, their families, maybe 600 riders and all the other hanger-ons and the followers and everyone else. And we've also got BIFA. So we thought this coming year, what we'd like to do is take some of the installations that you would see in a BIFA festival and perhaps rearrange their timing throughout the course of the year so that we would still have some very fantastic installations supporting particularly the environment and our sustainability culture.
Right.
But spread them out through the course of the year, particularly perhaps in some of those time periods when things are getting a little slower.
Yes, yes.
And so that's the charge we've asked BCA to do. We'll see how that works. We're working very closely with the Breck Tourism Office that what do we slot, when, as well as where in town. We learned a lot from the Troll.
Yes.
That perhaps the Troll was not in the best spot initially. And the new spot by the ice skating rink is absolutely terrific and outstanding. I was there last week and I was really blown away.
Yes, they've done some, the trail is beautiful. It has really worked out. We just had that busy holiday season and it's worked out really well.
Yes, yeah. It's great. And what's really great, even when the BCA puts on these wow factors, Breck Music, the film festival, many of the other resident arts organizations basically join at those times to do something even special during those moments. So I think by diluting the BIFA a little bit and sprinkling it around the year, I don't think we're not gonna give up a lot.
Right.
Because we have a whole heck of a lot going on in August anyway.
Yes, there is a lot going on. I think the
community will appreciate that very much. I mean, a good example is we've had a lot of positive comments from our community regarding 4th of July. I know a lot of folks were disappointed, no fireworks, but as a result, I think a lot of folks that were in town, both guests and locals, really felt there was a little less pressure on the town this 4th of July.
Yeah.
And I think it was just a lot more comfortable for everyone. So I think if we start spreading some things out in the right locations at the right time of year with some very interesting installations, temporary installations that might run anywhere from 3 to 5, 6 months, I'm hoping that we'll have some excellent feedback.
Yeah, and I think what's important for everyone to see and for this conversation is that there is a lot of long-range planning going into this, a lot of strategizing and really, like you said, trying to get all of our organizations to work together and collaborate so that it's just, a much better art scene.
And a lot smoother.
A lot smoother.
And everybody sort of knows the rules and knows the process and just streamline it, and ultimately it should become more effective and efficient.
Yeah, I guess my last question would be, what would you hope that in 5 years we're talking about when it comes to the arts if we do another one of these sort of reevaluations?
I was just going to say, I think in 5 years we should be doing another reevaluation. And, the way I'll score this, and I was thinking about that as I was driving over here today to sit with you, Haley, was I think back after we really upped the game plan and created BCA, at the same time we saw all the other resident arts organizations really increasing the quality of their boards, increasing the quality of their staffs, which has led to really increasing the quality of the programming and the presentations across the board. I think when it first started, I'd probably have given it a B, average score across the board.
Right.
I think as we look over the last year, and again, the improvements that have been made by everybody across the board, I'd give it a B+. And I'm hopeful that with the task force that's meeting right now to look for more better processes and cooperations and possibly some organizational design changes so we don't look at just 5 silos. Maybe there's some combinations that make some sense. We'll see. I think that will really help us get to A-.
Right.
And then I think we'll need a period of time to just see how all of this works. It's like anything else. It's going to require fine-tuning. You're not coming out of the box day one with an organizational design or a structure and say, okay, here's how it's going to work. I could really see over the next several years that we start down the road where we do have some combinations occurring and some of the low-hanging fruit, like marketing as an example, maybe beginning to combine some marketing budgets from every resident arts organization so that we can market collectively throughout the county.
Right.
I think that's the low-hanging fruit. And then I think as we go along, I think as people start feeling even more comfortable and more trusting one with the other, any combination that may not have occurred coming out of the box.
Right.
Others may decide to kind of come in later in different forms or a different format. Because at the end of the day, each one of these organizations will need their full board support to possibly give something up, to compromise for the greater good. And that's really what we want to do at the end of the day is, are we all working toward the greater good, which is what's in the long-term best interest of arts for the town of Breckenridge? And so I think there'll be some fine-tuning. I think in 4 to 5 years, I think another group will come together and say, okay, let's take a look at things. Markets have changed. People want different experiences.
Yes, of course.
Because you've always got to be cognizant of what your market is. And markets change all the time. Technology changes all the time. The notion of communicating arts and culture. So I think they'll all need to be reevaluated and hopefully some fine-tuning as opposed to, I'll call it, going to do more fine-tuning with a capital F for fine and T for tuning this time.
Right.
And hopefully next time it's a small F and it's a small T.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think it's just very exciting and indicative of how innovative we are always continuing to try to be as a town. So thanks for joining us today and
my pleasure.
Talking about everything when it comes to arts. And thanks for following along. And we will be updating you on the arts as we go about this process more. So thank you.
Super. Thanks, Haley.